Well, hey team, welcome back to the channel. As always, I am stoked to see you. I'm sitting here with my good pal Jared, 2 Alpha Solutions, and we're going to talk about freaking radios. Jared, you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, man. I'm Jared, 2 Alpha Solutions. You probably, if you haven't heard of me, or you have, I was at the second season of the SEER Challenge, season 2, and then I was there again for season 3 as the Op 4, and that's how me and Bill initially met, is in season 2 out there at Randall's.
Yeah.
So glad to have you here, bud.
Yeah, appreciate it.
Thanks for coming by, and it's awesome having you here.
Absolutely. Hey, you've been into radio for what, 30 years?
Longer than that, really.
It makes us old.
We're not old. We're well seasoned.
That's right.
Yeah. Well seasoned.
Yeah.
But no, I started in radio. I was probably 12, 13 years old. Just CB.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I think my mom got a radio, a CB radio for the car. And I thought, oh, what's that? That looks kind of cool.
Yeah.
You know, and I even remember being like a small kid, 6, 7 years old, and the neighbors had like a Bronco or something, and they had a CB in their Bronco.
Mm-hmm.
And we would talk to the neighbor people, the
Right.
neighbors around,
Yeah.
on their CB in their Bronco, you
Yeah.
know, in their vehicle.
Oh, that's good stuff.
But yeah, so whenever I really started getting into the outdoor stuff as a young teenager, is when I discovered radio, and
Mm-hmm.
I'd go out in the woods and play, and I'd have a little handheld CB I'd take out there with me, and I'd be
Yeah.
able to talk back to my mom, and then sooner or later other kids that came out to play in the woods would get radios, and we'd be out there doing radio relays and LERP stuff out there.
Yeah.
13-year-olds is pretty cool.
No, that's good stuff.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I think that kind of hits nail right on the head, you know, having a means to be able to communicate with other people, right?
Absolutely.
Some modes of transport, or some of the bands are really fine-tuned and are better tuned for close range, and some are better tuned for long range,
Absolutely.
right?
There's something out there for any intermediary that you want to do in there.
Yeah.
Whether it's from here to the house, from here to town, from the next state over, across the country, or across the globe.
Yeah, and even just a few minutes ago, we were talking to guys down in, or up in Ohio and Canada, listening to the guys down speaking Spanish down in South America
Right.
somewhere.
Talked to a guy in Bermuda.
Yeah. And,
one of the Bermuda Islands.
Right.
Yeah.
so all over the place.
Right.
So with, I mean, all that said, like, it's 2024. Why amateur radio?
Because infrastructure sucks.
It does suck.
It
right?
sucks, yeah.
And you know, I was thinking, you know, driving up here, like anything that we do on the radio, I can talk to the same people on my cell phone.
Yes. you
Whether
can.
it's using email or different apps like Signal or Telegram or whatever. And certainly some people you can talk to, but as you pointed out, infrastructure, man.
Right. You're relying on somebody else, on a third party.
Yeah.
And possibly the government, you know, to facilitate you communicating with somebody else.
Right. Well, on that note, we don't love you, Joe Biden.
FJB.
But that's a really good point as far as the value that amateur radio brings to the table, because it is your own infrastructure.
Right.
Right.
And there are so many aspects to amateur radio. You can take one of these cheap little stupid Baofeng radios, which are great. You know, there's a lot of haters out there for them, but for what they are, they're great.
Yeah.
I could sit or talk to the family at the house.
Right.
If I have friends over that aren't don't have their own radios, or they're not radio inclined,
Mm-hmm.
I can give them another one and go play in the woods, and still be able to communicate with them.
So these are really good for short range.
Yeah, a couple
communications,
miles.
Right? Yeah.
Depending.
Right.
You know.
I know with a good antenna, for me, I can get upwards of 10 miles, but that's kind of stretching
That's
it
stretching
for my
it,
terrain.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So flat terrain, it's a little flatter here than where you're at.
Yeah.
About an hour to the west of here, we're in the Shenandoah National Park, where it's pretty rough out there. You know, you're talking thousands of feet of elevation change.
Yeah.
It's a pretty mountainous area, so something like this, you'll be able to talk from the bottom of the valley to the top of the mountain.
Mm-hmm.
You're not going to be able to talk to the next valley over.
Right. So I think that it's something where people kind of get hung up on as far as, you know, what system, what radio system, if you will, do I need to try to get in touch, in my fingers into? And I tell guys all the time, like, who do you want to talk to?
Right, you have to have a goal of who you want to talk to, why you want to talk to that person,
Right.
or that particular group.
Mm-hmm.
If you just go out and buy a radio, and you don't have anyone to talk to, who are you going to talk to?
Right.
You're going to talk to yourself.
Yeah, and you're not going to talk to Bermuda with this radio.
No, I'm barely going to be able to talk to somebody in town on this
Right.
radio.
Yeah.
You know, especially if the person in town has the same radio.
Mm-hmm.
If they're in a mobile unit or maybe a base station, a big base station set up like we have here, yeah, we could probably talk to them and be able to talk back. Talking one of these to another one of these, you're not gonna. It's probably not gonna happen.
Right.
I mean, it's possible under right conditions.
Yeah.
But it's gonna be tough.
So outside of that, we'll call this the town radio, right?
Right.
Or the town bands, if you will, which is UHF and VHF.
Correct.
On these radios. Outside of those, if I wanted to talk regional, or you know, in my state or in the southeast or northeast kind of area, now what do I need to try to get into?
So regionally, we're gonna say anything less than 100 miles.
Yeah.
We'll say 0 to 100 miles.
Yeah.
VHF, UHF is still gonna work great, but not with
not with that.
Not with this.
Right.
You're gonna you want this one right here,
right,
with a 100-foot tower like I have set up outside, with a big antenna array out there.
Right.
This radio, if I could connect it to this little rubber ducky antenna on here, you know, with the right coax and adapters, I'm still not going to talk to it anyway.
Right.
You know, with this antenna. Most of your range and that you're going to get out there and talk with somebody with is going to be due to the antenna.
Okay.
And not necessarily the
Right.
radio. I can connect this radio, this stupid Baofeng, that does 4
You can
watts.
connect that to your tower.
I can connect this to the tower, the VHF antenna I have up there, and talk 75 miles on this.
Right.
I might talk 75 feet with this. you know.
Right.
Yeah.
So I think that's something that people don't understand with VHF. You can talk to the moon, right?
Absolutely.
Right.
Well, you don't talk to the moon.
Well, yeah.
Yeah, but
well,
yeah. We
do you?
We might. So there's a small group of amateur radio operators out there that do EME. It's called Earth, Moon, Earth, where they have some pretty high power equipment,
right?
Talking 1500 watts on VHF, and they have these huge, absolutely huge antenna arrays that are like a laser beam.
Yeah.
And they have tracking software that follows the moon across the sky, and they'll shoot their signal to the moon,
right?
And it bounces
right back,
and it comes back down to Earth, somewhere different on the planet.
Yeah, I said talking to the moon, but you can talk to the space station.
Oh yeah, well I can talk to the space station on this, even with this,
right?
With this,
well, because it's a line of sight.
It's line of sight,
right?
400 kilometers up,
but
it's still line of sight,
right?
Yeah.
On VHF, are you able to send data?
You can, yes.
Right.
There's so many different digital modes out there.
Yeah.
And I'm not really big on, I should say I'm big, I want to learn. I have a lot to learn about digital modes.
Yeah.
You actually might know more about digital modes than I do.
But I think that it's something to consider, that even though you're talking amateur radio, it's not all voice transmissions, right?
No, it's not all voice. There's so many different data transmission modes that are out there.
So you can send text.
You can send
files,
text,
emails.
Emails. There's
pictures.
You can send pictures. Even these radio, or especially the 9700 here.
Yeah.
I could send you a picture.
Yeah.
On it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Not the one that you showed me earlier.
No, not that. That's just between you and me.
Yeah, that's right. So, like with going lower in the bands, getting into the HF. Now where are we talking?
Now you're really starting to open up your regional and cross country stuff and across the globe communications. Yeah. Depending on what band of frequencies that you're using.
Right.
So this time of year, 6 meter band, 50 megahertz. That's a fairly regional regional within 100 miles, 200 miles or so. But there's certain times of the year that we're coming into right now where you get a lot of tropospheric ducting.
Yeah.
And you get sporadic E, which these are different factors that the atmosphere has. That allows you to talk on 6 meters, like Texas or even California, across the globe or across the country like that.
Yeah, radio waves are funky.
They are funky. They are funky. And the higher the frequency, so you start getting VHF, UHF. Those radio waves are not going to be refracted back down to the Earth. They're going to go straight through the atmosphere and out into outer space. And that's why you're able to use those frequencies to do EME stuff and talk to the space station and satellites and whatnot.
Speaking of going up, you also run some microwave stuff here, right?
Yep, I have the 9700 does microwave, 1296 they call it, 1.2 gigahertz. It's really, the use of it is really no different than using it for VHF or UHF. It's just a lot higher frequency.
Yeah, so
it's a lot more line of sight.
A lot more line of sight.
A lot more and the antennas that we use for it they're almost like a laser beam. So there's a group of 3 or 4 of us around here that can talk together. We can all talk to each other, but we can't all talk to each other at one time because we're like this perfect triangle. Yeah. And those beam antennas are so pinpointed that I can only talk to one and listen to one at a time. Yeah. It's just very narrow because it's such a high frequency.
But on the higher frequency, the benefit, the additional benefit is you got more bandwidth that you can push.
Yeah, right? So I think there's 20 megahertz that you can utilize in the amateur band for 1296.
So if you wanted to send data, like that's
so really if you have a good line of sight to somebody, that's the band to use because there's hardly any activity up there because not very many people have it. And the higher the frequency, the more data you can get into a smaller bandwidth of frequency there. So it's a great data band.
So Joe Schmuckatelli is concerned, okay, let's say I get a radio. I don't necessarily have anybody that I want to talk to, but I want to try to get into amateur radio. And I dial into a frequency, maybe I'm on 6 meter, and I hear somebody like, are these nothing but sad hams out there or what kind of person is actually on the other end of these?
So anything that's on the amateur radio bands you're going to hear licensed amateur radio operators out there. Personally, I don't care what you do. Yeah.
What kind of people are using radios at?
They're normal everyday people.
Right.
Like you and I.
Yeah.
They're people.
Yeah.
You know.
Most of them are a little seasoned, right?
A lot of them are. Some of them are a little opinionated.
That's right.
Some of them are a little Gestapo-ish.
Yeah, but almost everybody I've talked to,
they're great people.
They're great people that really just want to learn more themselves and then share that knowledge with other people.
They want to be able to bring new blood into the hobby.
And there's thousands of amateur radio clubs around the country.
Oh yeah, thousands.
So if you're,
I think there's something like 400,000. And my numbers might be wrong. Yeah. But we'll say 500,000 licensed amateur radio operators across the United States. Right. In its territories.
All kinds of contests and all kinds.
If that's what you're into. Right. There's contests and there's radio direction finding contests, which I think would be fun. Yeah. I'm not into the actual contest part of it stuff, but be able to go out and hone in on a signal and go find a hidden transmitter somewhere out there. That's kind of neat to do.
It's kind of neat to do.
It's a little fun.
Yeah. So, if you're out there and you're concerned, like, my knowledge base isn't there, there are, again, just hundreds of clubs everywhere that can help you prepare for the exams, as well as just help prepare you to become gooder at operating equipment. So, that said, like, what's let's say you have somebody who's never touched a radio and they want to try to start to get into Baofeng radios. What kind of cost are we talking about?
One of these, this is what is this? A UV9R. I think they're $40. Yeah.
Now, if they wanted something that
UV5Rs are like $25 or $30.
Yeah, dime a dozen.
Yeah, they're very cheap. They're not the greatest radio out there.
Right.
But they serve the purpose.
Right.
This is a great radio to learn on.
Can I talk securely on that radio?
No.
No.
Absolutely not. And in amateur radio, you are forbidden to use any kind of encryption.
Right.
Even speaking in encrypted terms, you're really not supposed to.
Yeah. There's kind of a gray line between encoding and encryption that the SEC really doesn't define. But yeah, encryption is a no-go.
If you get on there and you speak your native tongue of Pig Latin,
right,
and nobody else knows what you're saying, but hey, that's their problem.
That's right. So if somebody wanted to try to use some UHF, VHF radios, but maybe wanted a little step above the $50 Baofeng, what kind of options do they have?
I mean, there's literally hundreds of options out there. There are so many brands of radios.
Nothing really more than like $350, $400 for a handheld.
Right, yeah. Some of them are a little more pricey.
Yeah, like some Yaesus make
Yaesu, Kenwood, Icoms, they all make handheld radios. Some of them can be modified to transmit outside of the amateur radio bands and into the GMRS if it's UHF. You're not supposed to, but we're all adults here. So,
do you get what you pay for?
Absolutely.
You do.
Absolutely.
So a $400 ICOM handheld radio is going to kick a Baofeng in the ass? Is there really that much difference in the two radios? The quality?
Not much. The quality's definitely better.
Yeah.
On that $400 radio.
Right.
But if I want somebody to come in here that's not a radio person, doesn't know, I'm not going to give them a $400 radio. I'm going to give them a $40 radio.
That's it.
I'm not going to cry a whole lot over this radio.
Right.
You know, just like this Motorola HT up there. That's anywhere between a $500 and $1,000 radio. I'm not going to give that to somebody. Yeah, that's my radio.
That's right. You got to have your own.
Even though that's a ruggedized radio and they're bomb-proof.
Right.
You know,
it's for us to work
when
through.
Somebody loses it out in the Manzanitas, I'm going to cry a little bit about that one.
You probably didn't catch that, but it's all good. Let's say they want to get into either a mobile station or try to get something for a shack, like maybe one of these crazy radios that you got. What kind of?
So a mobile radio, couple $100. Yeah. $100 for a baseline dual band UHF VHF radio. Yeah. TYT 9800 I think is a good radio. You can find them on Amazon all day long for I think $150, $200, something like that. It's a great radio. I have one still brand new in the box. Haven't used it yet. But the radio I have in my truck is basically the same thing, but it's a Yaesu version of it. That one I don't remember what it cost me, $400. But it's a 50-watt radio, and
50 watts and a good antenna get you along.
It'll get you a long ways.
Do good stuff.
Get you a long ways.
And make you, even on the shorter range, just much more crystal clear.
Absolutely, yeah. And then that particular radio, I can set up to do crossband repeating. So I could use my truck radio, my mobile radio in my truck as a repeater. Right. So I can give you this radio. You can be talking to it on VHF. I can have a UHF radio, and we're talking to each other through the truck radio. Yeah. You're on VHF, I'm on UHF. It crossband repeats that.
Now we're talking. Right.
So now we've really effectively, it's a force multiplier.
It is.
Huge force multiplier, because now instead of talking a mile, we can talk 50 miles.
And somebody's only going to be able to listen to half the transmission.
Exactly.
Boom. How about a legitimate base station HF radio? Entry level.
You're probably looking at about $1,000 just for the radio, give or take. Yeah. The ICOM 7300 radio. It's an HF 6-meter radio. They're selling new for around $1,100. Right. You can find them on the used market for around $800. Yeah.
But odds are, as you can see, once you get bit.
Once you get this, you're gonna get that.
That works. Is that the gateway? This is the marijuana of radios.
This is the marijuana of radios. But you can literally spend $40 and be happy.
Yeah.
Or you could spend $20,000 and not be happy. So it just depends on what direction you want to take it.
Right.
What you want to do, what your end game is, what your goals are. If all you want to do is be able to talk with your family and around
you don't need
town,
to spend
you don't need
$20,000.
you don't need to spend $20,000 and put a 100-some-foot tall tower in your backyard.
You could literally spend for an entire family a couple $100 on some handheld radios and be able to talk.
Probably, I would say, 3 radios and whatever, $100.
Yeah.
You know, you get one of these cheap Baofengs.
Absolutely. And if it breaks or you got to replace the battery, it's not a big deal.
Right, exactly. You're not going to cry over it.
That's right.
You can make this whatever you want it to be.
Yeah. I think it's a great thing about it.
It is. It is. If you want to be able to talk around the world, the different points across the globe, you're going to have to spend a little more than $40.
A little more, yeah. Well, awesome stuff.
It's really endless. There's really no end in sight for it.
Yeah.
Once you really start diving into it.
What are these things up here real quick?
So these are amplifiers for HF, for high frequency. So these are all tube amplifiers.
That means they're vintage.
Not necessarily. These are probably from the late 90s.
Yeah. Right.
So that's not vintage for us.
No, that's...
We're seasoned.
Yeah. It takes us into the glory days of hairband.
That's right. But even some new amplifiers that they sell new are still tube amplifiers.
Yeah.
Because the clarity and the power output of tubes is pretty superior to anything that's solid
As
state.
any guitar player would tell you.
Yes.
Tube amps are better.
Tube amps are better. Yeah.
How many amps are you getting out of these guys?
So this one here, depending on what band, I'm rated about 1,000 watts. I use my radio, and actually this radio will do anywhere from 0 to 100 watts itself. Which is 100 watts is really pretty good.
That's a ton.
It is. It's you can talk around the world on 100 watts.
Right. So what do you need an amplifier for? 1,000 watts. 10 times.
So you can talk around the world a little bit better. So when you have poor band conditions, you have a station out there that's kind of hard to get to, that can kind of hear you on 100 watts, and now you're pumping 1,000 watts to them.
If you want to make sure that nobody else can talk.
Exactly.
Right.
Yeah. But
which is kind of an intro into RF jamming, right? Pushing a lot of power on a specific frequency that somebody's using.
Exactly. Yeah. So the Russian number station is experiencing that right now. They've been having some jammers here lately, and I think just last night they overcame those jammers by probably increasing their power output. It's
about the only thing you can do.
Right. So you can overcome radio jamming.
Yeah, right.
So, but yeah, so this one will do about 1,000 watts. It gives you that edge over somebody else out there. If you want to make sure that somebody's receiving your signal, that you want to use the amplifier. This one here probably does about 2,000, 2,200 watts. That has 2 tubes in it, so it's a little bit more powerful.
That sounds like some Back to the Future stuff. All kinds of gigawatts.
That's right.
Going on here. How about this thing on the right?
That is an antenna rotor controller. So the antenna array that I have on the top of my tower, the whole thing turns because they're all beam antennas up there. They're very directional. They have a beam, like a cone pattern.
So you have omnidirectional antennas?
Omnidirectional. I have one of those on the tower as well. It's at the very top. Omnidirectional radiates its RF power equally in all directions, 360 degrees. Where the beam antennas, depending on what band and the type of antenna it is, has a narrow cone-shaped beam, roughly 20 or 30 degrees. You know, the further away you go away from the antenna, the beam pattern is a little bit wider.
What are some other benefits of using beam antennas?
So one is security. So if you have somebody around you that you don't want to hear what you're saying, and the person you want to talk to is a different direction from where they're at, you can turn that antenna. The people that you don't want to hear aren't gonna.
They can't hear.
They can't hear you,
right.
And only the person that you want to hear can hear you now. Or I shouldn't say only the person.
Right, but only in that direction.
Only in that direction. Yeah. Correct. Yes.
The terrain kind of does the same thing, right? It helps shape.
There's some terrain masking in there.
Right.
Yeah. You get down into some valleys. Excuse me. If you get down in the valley, you can shoot that beam antenna straight up to that valley. It's really not going to come out over top of the mountains too far.
Right.
And down to the other side a little bit.
Yeah.
But it's going to be really narrow up and really strong through that valley.
So moving up and over, we're basically talking propagation, right? With how radio waves kind of move through the atmosphere.
So the higher the frequency, the more line of sight it is. So you're not going to be VHF, UHF, microwave stuff. You're not going to be able to get over top of those mountains into the next valley on the other side of that mountain from you.
Now, unless you're a flat earther, what is realistic line of sight? It's
for VHF and UHF, 50 miles.
50 miles.
Yeah, that's pretty realistic.
If you're a flat earther, it's basically the entire Earth.
It's infinite.
Infinite.
Forever.
But if we're in the real world, legitimately, like, cresting the horizon is only like 7 miles, right? So then depending on elevation, you get a little bit further.
Correct.
And that's ground propagation?
That's all ground waves, yeah.
Right.
It's all line of sight ground waves.
Yeah.
Now, when you start getting into the HF, you still get the ground wave effect, and you'll get some more refraction over the horizon a little bit. But there's also takeoff angles on antennas too.
Yeah.
Which is a whole other rabbit hole to dive down into. But you can your antenna or your RF signal coming out of an HF antenna is going to go up into the atmosphere and refract off the ionosphere, which is a layer of the atmosphere, and come back down to another point, another distant point, whether it's 100 miles, 500 miles, 1,000 miles.
And because of that propagation, that's how you're able to talk around the world on those frequencies.
And you can get multiple bounces going across the globe.
Literally skip all the way around the world.
Exactly.
Have you ever heard of ghost freaks?
Ghost freaks?
Yeah. No. So, little sidebar, I guess. Legend has it that there are frequencies that have been skipping, and when the propagation is right,
they come back 50 years later.
They come back.
Yeah,
and I've heard like legitimate Vietnam stories and World War II, so it's pretty cool.
I think that's some flat Earth stuff.
It probably is too. But it's
pretty cool.
It sounds cool.
It sounds pretty cool. Yeah. It would be fun to experience that.
Yeah, it would.
I wouldn't mind experiencing that at all.
Maybe it was a you from 20 years ago.
Might have been.
Right? How crazy would that be to talk to yourself?
Right, hear yourself talking. There are stories out there about that, yes. Yeah.
Well, Jared, I appreciate your time and talking about all things amateur radio, man. This has been good stuff. Yeah.
So I appreciate you coming all the way up here.
Yeah, it's the only reason I came up here.
That's right.
That's right. Just to do this.
Just to do this. I came down to your place a couple months ago, and now you're here.
That's it.
So, but no, really appreciate you stopping in, and Yoda says he likes it too.
Yeah, he did.
He's a good boy, and so amateur radio. It's a great thing. It's not too great for your pocketbook sometimes. You know, according to the wife, this probably cost $100 for all this.
Right, that's it.
You know,
she didn't
$100.
You don't need to know.
Yeah. No, seriously, there's a lot of money invested in here. Of course, I didn't do it all at once.
Right.
You know, it's an ongoing thing. You get one radio. You save up, you get another one. You save up, you get some.
It's just like buying tools, right? You don't start off.
You don't start off with the 5
with Snap-on with a whole Snap-on toolbox.
Exactly. You buy a little bit at a time. So it can be very overwhelming to somebody new coming into the hobby.
Yeah.
They come in to see this and like, wow, I really want that, and then they start seeing price tags and like,
maybe.
Right. Yeah. Well, just save your money. You don't need all of this to be able to do it.
Awesome.
You know, this one single radio right here will do everything that these other ones do, except for the microwave.
Yeah.
You know, it's kind of, they call it a shack in a box because it does HF, VHF, and UHF.
Right on.
But yeah, there's so many different options out there.
So many options.
And Some of these the smaller ones, like the IC705, Yaesu has some smaller ones. You can actually make man packs out of them.
Yeah.
Put them in your backpack and take them out in the woods.
Right.
And set up antenna systems out there, build antenna systems out there, and
on that note, it probably will be the last thought I think in here is, on that note, like, if you have any ideas about the infrastructure of third-party infrastructure, cell phones or anything else being down or degraded, or just you don't feel comfortable using it, and you think that you may need to use a radio someday, the time to get smart on that is right now.
Right now,
right?
Yeah.
When you don't need to use a
so
radio.
don't go buy a radio, and when you get it, take it out of the box, charge it, and it's like, oh, I don't know what to do with it, and put it in your drawer.
Right.
And when the shit hits the fan and you need it, you're not going to have a clue.
You got no idea.
You don't have a clue what you do. So if you get these, whether it's a $50 Baofeng or $500 Icom handheld, use it. Get your radio license.
Yeah.
Get your amateur radio license, so you can actually go out and make legitimate contacts. And just by using it and talking on it, you can talk nonsense to somebody.
Yeah.
But by doing that, you're gaining the experience and the knowledge.
Yeah. All the ins and outs.
All the ins and outs. Just by, you don't even have to talk about radio. Just talk on it.
Yeah.
And you'll start to understand where things work and where it doesn't work. And
all about that propagation stuff.
Exactly.
And how much watts you need and how kind of antennas you need.
Well, why is it I can talk to George over here when I'm facing this way, but when I turn around, I can't talk to him anymore? I didn't move, I just turned around. And well, it's because your body's shielding the antenna from that direction. It's little stuff like that.
Yeah.
So, yeah, get out and actually use them.
Go do the stuff.
Go do the stuff. You don't go out and buy a firearm and stick it in your closet. Well, some people do. Some people do. But
some people have more money than us to go out and buy all the guns.
The cool toys and not use them.
Because you want to shoot, 1,500 meters.
Right.
Right?
Yeah. I mean, that's
the thing.
That's the thing to do.
Right?
Yeah.
Well, Jared, man, I appreciate you, brother.
I appreciate you, sir.
Make sure you leave some comments or questions down below, and we'll keep this conversation rolling, team. Team, if you want to master your craft and develop your tactical virtue, make sure you subscribe to the channel and click that notification bell so that you can stay up to date on future content. Consider becoming a channel member. It's going to give you exclusive access to content not available to anybody else. I appreciate you guys. Until then, you stay out there, you keep grinding, and you stay safe.
I know you're out there! Come to my voice!